All right, everybody. Welcome to the Path of He, Kabbalistic class here. And to begin with, we're going to discuss our experiences with the Path of Wow. Now, I had the opportunity to speak with Kevin this week. We had our regular monthly appointment, and he shared with me some things that he did not share here in class, and I didn't. Are you guys hearing me? Just want to make sure because my mic is looking a little bit odd. Okay, excellent. He shared with me some stuff that he had not shared here in class, and while I certainly understand you guys don't need to air everything that's going on in your consciousness here in class, but if you want to share, I want you to feel like this is a forum where you are amongst friends, and it's certainly possible to have something of a discussion. I realize that it's limited since you're typing, but I'd love for you to share your more personal experiences with this as well as your more general experiences. So let's talk a little bit about the Path of Wow. As I've mentioned, these paths, these higher paths past the path of Zion are largely similar to one another. They are different descriptions of almost the same thing, which is entering into a state of divine consciousness. And so I'd like to hear your experiences. Now, I know some of you felt Zion was a very high experience of divine consciousness, as well it should have been. But let me know what your experiences were with WoW so far. And this is probably only the second or third time we've actually done a class 1 week after the previous one. So some of you may not have even gotten as much experience with this one as you did with some of the other ones. But please let me know your experiences. In the meantime, I'm going to take a look here. Right here. Very easy to find. So in my New Hermetics Tarot, which, by the way, those of you who supported the Kickstarter campaign, they are just about ready to head off to the printers. I had to change the back design because I wasn't liking the way it was coming out. But there's going to be a different back design for the different sizes of them. And then if I decide to release the New Hermetics Tarot as a... Oops, looks like I've lost you guys. Are you guys there? I got a little note saying that things were getting funky with the network connection. That too will have the general release of the tarot will have a different back as well. So for those of you who ordered the Kickstarter version, you're going to get a version of the back of the tarot. Let me see if I've got one of them here. I think I do. Yeah, I do. And it's kind of an interesting looking design. It's actually got a, I don't know if you can see it that well in the camera, but it's got a little New Hermetic seal, and then around it are some images of the inner temple. They're actually the same images that are from the book, but colored in. So it's kind of interesting. Little teeny versions of it. So it's more like a pattern than like images. But so that's the back for the limited edition one, and the general release will be different. Juan says that he shared his thoughts on the first run with me seeing the divine hands, but the pottery was not working out. Was always some sort of perfect mess. I took your suggestion of allowing the pottery to unfold without paying it mind and found it shaping the clay into little beings. Each resembled family and friends. I think that's a really beautiful metaphor for that experience. Kevin, I had an experience of coming into a total oneness with the all of everything. I walked into an everything mode. It felt as if I was in touch with all and created the world itself that I was in. Yeah, and of course, it wasn't you that created the world, Kevin, but rather that you were entering into the consciousness that created the world. It's an important distinction for us to make at this level of exploring our minds, that we don't become completely solipsistic and think that we are the center and only being in the universe or something, that we're that we're creating it, but rather that we're allowing. The network is getting funky, so I'm just gonna give it a second. Rather that we are entering into the consciousness that did so. Now, did I cut off for a second there because I keep getting this thing flashing up on the screen saying that I have a bad network connection. I just want to make sure that I'm that you guys are okay. Excellent. So Robin said, have done the recording 3 times so far. First time with the Eucharist, second and third time simply listening. Was able to absorb the experience pretty well without resisting. Interesting, the second and third time, at the time of ascent through the Sephiroth at Tiphereth, there was a brilliant light. Once in Chesed, the same thing occurred. So, yeah, I mean that's really beautiful that's happening to you, Robin. And Juan made mention of the cards here. Awesome, looking forward to working with the cards already. Yeah, I mean they're a fun deck of cards, and I'm actually probably going to start utilizing them when I'm doing readings for people. Maybe not all the time, but at least a significant portion of the time. When I first got the digital pictures taken, I made a small deck of them that were actually a little smaller than these even, and I was utilizing them to do readings for people for a while. But I'm not sure what happened to that deck. Someday it'll be unearthed amongst all my relics. So excellent. I'm glad that people had some good experiences with WoW. Does anyone have anything else that they want to share from it? Okay, so Kevin mentioned that the picture froze, so maybe that is happening every once in a while, but we won't worry about that too much. As long as the sound is coming through, it's really the sound that makes things weird. Juan says that he's going to replace his deck with the new Hermetics deck. Well, I mean that's certainly. You could. Let me see if I can find the other thing, which I think is pretty cool. This is the other deck. Now this oops, froze again. This probably won't be. I will not be releasing this to the general public, but I think most of you here are actually people who supported the campaign. So these are the other set of trumps, the ones from Sexual Sorcery, and they've actually got a different back too, which is like the little alchemical images that I drew as the back. So those are pretty cool too. They could be utilized for some sort of readings, but not they aren't a full deck. So back to the subject at hand. Path of Hay. So this path, again, we are dealing with entering into divine consciousness, and again, it's fairly simple. There's not a problem to be solved or a challenge to be overcome, but rather just simply allowing yourself to flow into it. And from here, we're going from Tiphereth into Chokmah. And this is an interesting one because this is one of the ones that, as with Zadi and the Star, Hay and the Emperor were switched by Crowley, and I haven't really changed the imagery in the way that a lot of Crowleyites probably would. And it's something that I kind of struggle with a little bit, but because I mean there are some aspects of the change that seem to make sense, and particularly at this juncture rather than the other one. Although certainly the energy of Tiphereth and the energy of Chokmah are both male. They're both masculine or positive polarity energy. Rather than having to do with the male gender, but they're definitely that sort of active force. Chokmah is the expansion of the universe, and Tiphereth is the balancing and the fusing of things together. They're very active energies, and so because of that, oops, that's not the emperor. The emperor, I lost him. The emperor's energy certainly plays. There's a reasonable case to be made for his energy being there. However, we're also way up on the tree of life, and so the energy of Sadi, of the star, which is that sort of expansive and flowing energy, also seems to make sense. But I've stuck with the emperor, and I think that there's good reason to do that. And some people, what they've done is they've simply switched the letters around so that the emperor remains in his place, but instead of He, we've switched it to Tzadi, which doesn't really make sense because that's not the way that the others were switched earlier by the Golden Dawn. But this is definitely a path that has multiple possible interpretations, and the one that I have given is simply one of those. Brendine is saying something here. I found the awareness of creation on every level, Tiphereth to Chokmah, at one experience. I felt love flowing out of Chokmah like a waterfall into Tiphereth. And Juan says, would you share the why you felt it should remain in a new Hermetic's benefit? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Juan. Can you rephrase? With answering the question, I think that Juan is asking, and I'll say it's like why I didn't make the change along with the Thelemites to the difference in the paths there. Is that what you're referring to, Juan? Okay. Well, I mean, I just don't fully agree with it, and I mean, I probably am in the extreme left of the interpretation of symbolic messages. I almost feel like you could place any tarot card or any number or any color or anything in any position, and there would be a case to be made for it, and some meaning could be found from it. That you could say, well, this path from Tiphereth to Chokmah, we should use the High Priestess. Well, sure, the High Priestess's energy, draws the power of Chokmah down to Tiphereth with her, magnetic feminine energy, or I mean, there's just a million different ways of approaching things, and you could make sense of it, and you could build a system around it, and I feel like the system could have some validity to it. I don't feel like symbols are set in stone, or that there's one absolute correct way to do almost anything, and I know that that's very challenging for some people to conceive of, because we all want to find the easy answer and the simple method of approaching things that's just going to be correct, and we don't have to think about it anymore. But I think that's not really necessarily the best growth model for one's own consciousness. I've chosen in most cases throughout my writings to stick largely with the Golden Dawn symbols, and this comes from an awareness of the fact that the Golden Dawn symbols are fraught with potential errors as well, and certainly the Hebrew Qabalah that precedes it has a lot of different associations and a lot of different meaning systems that have been attached to things, which all have their own validity as well, and we've mentioned this in earlier classes as well. But I've stuck with. Are you guys hearing me? Because I just got a message again. I'm going to pause for a second until I find out if you guys are hearing me. Okay. I've stuck with the Golden Dawn symbols for a couple of reasons. First of all, they were the first symbols that I was exposed to. My earliest experiences with magic were reading the chunky Llewellyn Golden Dawn book. That was really one of the first magical books, other than, say, the Book of Abramelin and the Mage and a couple of Enochian things. The first one that sort of systematized things and made things really clear for me was that Golden Dawn book. And so those are the symbols that I was presented with. At the same time, probably the first like true magical book that I got actually was Aleister Crowley's Magic in Theory and Practice. And that offered a slightly different system, but in that book, he hadn't fully engaged with the Tzadi is not the star himself, or at least he wasn't publicly writing about it as clearly. He mentions it in a couple of places, I think, but he still utilizes the same old systems in some of his charts and things like that as well. So there definitely wasn't, for me, a sense of the fact that this was a necessary change that needed to happen, or the world was going to come to pieces. Now, and that's all personal. That has nothing to do with the greater metaphysical universe. When it comes to the greater metaphysical universe, I see these symbols as being pathways to reality, pathways to true experience, and that one is not necessarily any better than another. They're both pathways. They both contain illusions. All words are illusions. All words make a mask between us and reality. When I say that I have a cake, I'm not describing the actual thing that's in front of me. I'm using a word to model what is in front of me. The actual experience of the cake is something that's unique. It's something that's only a part of that one individual cake and no other. But in order for us to communicate about it, we have to use a symbol, a cake, to understand what we're talking about. But just because you've had a cake, that doesn't necessarily mean that you understand everything about the cake that's in front of me. So any use of symbols is always going to create errors. It's always going to create illusions. It's always going to create problems. So to me, any one set of symbols that has a valid kind of framework to it is as good as any other. And because ultimately they're all masking truth in one way or another. Robin says, I think she's saying it is true. But she says, is it true? It's best to begin and learn an established symbolic system and then allow oneself to grow to the point where what resonates from within can be accurate in different situations as well. Sounds sort of like what you're saying. Yeah, and to me, the Golden Dawn system is fairly... it hasn't 100% taken over. There are certainly other ones that are competing and have a place within things, but it is the largest one and the one that most people can recognize the most easily. And so I felt like that was the one that I wanted to share, because it would create the most meaning connections between me and other people. If I chose the one that Pappas created, or the one that William Gray created, certain people would get a lot of benefit from that, because they'd go, oh, well, Jason really understands where I'm coming from. But the vast majority of people would be like, well, I don't understand these meanings because I've read a book about the Golden Dawn system and it says these other things. So, ultimately, I think that it's useful to then take the system that you're familiar with and then look at other systems and see how they also present a valid path to the divine. I think that there's just as much value in that as well. But I think for ease of use, it's simplest to just do things as they are. And I don't think Crowley was ever completely satisfied with his own Tzadi is not the star solution, even though he wrote about it in a couple of places, and he presents a reasonable sort of way in which it has a, there's a rhythm to the order of the tarot that creates these two loops in the system. If you look in the Book of Thoth, I think you can see the image of what I'm talking about, where when those two are switched, and the two that were switched by the Golden Dawn, which is justice and strength, there's sort of like a double loop that's made in the symbols, and that's pretty. But I don't know that it necessarily describes truth in an accurate way, and I don't know that he ever fully established how it established a better truth. And Rurik says, personal experience, cultural background may play a role in what set of symbols you are most comfortable with. And Juan said something earlier. Jason, thank you so much for that incredible insight. I personally enjoy your thoughts, especially in regards to work within New Hermetics as a whole. Having studied GD material for many years, it is only in working through your course that the material in the past has become of greater significance. Well, thank you. Yeah, and that does offer another opportunity, is that when you utilize a set of symbols that people are familiar with, and you offer your own kind of take within that symbol set, then it allows you to breathe greater life into that same set of symbols. Whereas if you just simply go to a different set of symbols and say, hey, this is the better way, all of a sudden your people are going, well, I don't know if I can understand what you're talking about at all. So Rurik, you're absolutely right, and I think that like for instance, if this class was largely being taken by French-speaking people, there's a different set of associations with the tarot and the Hebrew letters that has long been utilized in a lot of French occultism, and that is the one that was suggested by Eliphas Levi and used by Pappus, which is starting with A. As the magician and going or Aleph, as the magician, and going forward from there with the fool being Tau. Levi makes a good argument for that, and if you read Transcendental Magic, as it's called now, you can see some great interesting things that he brings forward with that way of approaching things. Doesn't take away from the Golden Dawn way. Juan says, one last question and then back to Val. What is the image hanging in the back of your wall, mate? It's drawing my attention, but can't make it out on this screen. I assume you mean this image, which is part of an Enochian table, the Holy Table. Kevin says, doesn't each archetype capture the thoughts of the magician that created it? If not so, then are not all ways of understanding contain some truth? And if so, we could capture the essence of what each magician taught. I'm not quite understanding what you're saying there, Kevin, but doesn't each archetype capture the thoughts of the magician that created it? Yeah, to an extent that is definitely true. But the thing is that your understanding of things and my understanding of things may be fundamentally different in some ways, and so while you may feel that you're understanding the thought that I'm pushing forth with the archetype, you may actually be getting a different flavor of things, and that's okay. But it's important to remember that. And I think all ways of understanding do contain some truth. I mean, I don't think that there's and this is, a lot of people criticize Ken Wilber, and I agree that there are some things that aren't perfect about his way of looking at things. But I think that one of the things that I really like about his descriptions of stuff is that there are different kinds of truth, and things can all be true and not be in competition with one another. And I think that's one of the valuable contributions that he's made. And I think other people have thought of it before him, but he sort of codified it in an easy to digest way. And that's one of the reasons I recommend reading his work. In fact, more than any other part of it, it's just simply the idea that we can all be correct with our way of looking at things, and there are different kinds of correct. And while something can be, true in the sense of being physically true, and not true in the sense of being, poetically true, and vice versa. Now I'm actually running on battery power because I literally ran in here to do this. I'm gonna have to plug in here for a second. Oh gosh. Can you guys hear me? Okay. For some reason, as usual, this silly any meeting is deciding that there's a problem when there's not, and creating issues. So let's turn our attention to the path of Wow. Very simple path. Again, into that demiurgic energy. It looks like you guys have been having a conversation while I was trying to get things plugged in here. Hold on a second. Let me take a look at it. Okay. Robin says, have read, studied various approaches to Qabalah pathworking and have taken what resonates from within to work further with. Juan says, right on, Robin. Kevin says, okay, I'm cool with that explanation. Brendine says, I enjoyed Wilbur, very insightful on truth. Juan says, truth is a perspective. Robin says, agreed, Juan, and everyone's perspective can be different. And then my sound went away. Now, Rurik says, correct requires a frame of reference. It's a judgment call. Does not exist out there. Besides, all truth is relative except personal experience in the here and now. Sure, and even that is relative to your, personal experiencer. And then Robin says, agreed, truth is relative. Now, truth being relative is definitely something that's a very modern and challenging matter, and this is one of the reasons why we have philosophical debates. There are the religious perspective for the past several thousand years has been no, truth is absolute. There's an absolute truth of the divinity, and that has to be accepted upon on faith, and obviously that perspective is waned in popular consciousness to a large degree, and we're living in a culture in which that is not the norm, although certainly a lot of spiritual people still do fundamentally operate from that space. And I'm not saying fundamentalists only. I mean, I think that there's a sense that we are attempting to discover the absolute truth in a spiritual context. And one of the challenging notions of modern spirituality is maybe there isn't an absolute truth. Maybe that is not something that we can discover, and in fact does not exist. That there is just simply experience, and there are good experiences and bad experiences, and there are directions that take us, as the Buddha would say, that are more and less skillful. But that ultimately, the absolute truth is that there is no absolute truth, which is ultimately a somewhat Buddhist idea. I'm assuming that you guys are still hearing me, but I'm not seeing any response on the thing. But now, Kevin says, truth being a perspective, isn't the truth of each magician's thoughts going to come through the teachings he presents? Yes, which is why it is important to have multiple perspectives in your thing. A lot of teachers of various things, not just metaphysical things, but will reference their own works a lot in their writings. Read this of mine, and then read this of mine, and then read this of mine, and then you'll come to understand why what I'm saying here in class makes sense. which of course is just what you're saying basically, that if you have a perspective, you're just going to present evidence that supports that perspective. um And Brendine says, all of us have a piece of the whole, like the description of the elephant by 5 blind men. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And so it's important to supplement anyone teaching with some information from others. And that, again, is not something that was popular in religious views for thousands of years. There was, you've signed on to this reality, and this is the one that you're going to get. And if you go to others, I mean, so much of the Bible is about, the constant fear that the male heads of the religion had, that their male followers were going to go and start breeding with the slutty foreign girls. And there's literally at least 100 pages on that specific subject. Juan has moved onto the path of Wow, which I think we should join him there at least a little bit. Wow was rather powerful. It did seem odd in that it was rather dogmatic. Found myself being drawn to images of, and please forgive the corniness, images of God or the All-Father walking by small cravings of humanity at random stops, picking up some of the cravings of these little humans to blow dust off them with his breath, other times gently with his finger, and then just as carefully placing each figure back on a stand of pure white. This same imagery came to me in all 3 runs of this path work. Each time I could see him as if from a third-person perspective or through the All-Father's eyes. That's very interesting. And yeah, I mean, this path, particularly since it presents the emperor, so it is God the Father as a concept that you're traveling through to Chokmah, and so you're definitely going to have that perspective here. The path of Dalet will be a little bit different, but this is obviously this is like the that forceful, energetic, fiery male energy. Now, we're getting pretty far ahead of ourselves, but the path of Dalet, it's got virtually the opposite, and so you're going to have a much different perspective on things. Here we have that sort of containing, nurturing female energy. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be a balance of both things, and so, I mean, ultimately, the consciousness of the All-Father is within all of us. We have that in our nature, in our being. We are from that mold. We also have the All-Mother in our nature, in our being, and in our mold, and we also have the transcendent Ein Sof in our nature as well. So, all of these things are, worthy of exploration and worthy of integration into ourselves. Okay, Brandine's got something interesting to say here. I've become aware of connections to others, and the eyes and ears connected with thoughts, reality to each other, telepathy much slicker between others. Was slicker what you were trying to say, or is there autocorrect? I'm not sure what that means. Oh, okay. Easier. I mean, that's my ideal for all of us, is to gain a greater understanding of each other. And one of the things that comes up, as you're doing readings with people, which I think a lot of a lot of Western occult metaphysicians don't do a lot of readings with other people, but I think it's very valuable. It's something that we have to offer as beings who have kind of explored more of the inner terrain, is to offer some insights into that for others. But as you are offering readings to people, you will find that you understand them on a very deep level. Not always linguistically, not always, their full history or something like that, but you will understand who and what they are on a very deep level a lot of the time. And this is something valuable that you have to offer the world as a result of doing a lot of inner spiritual working. And something that you should feel comfortable doing if you'd like to. And, you don't have to if you don't want to. But certainly doing readings on people is much easier as you sort of explore the universal more and more. So, we have spent a considerable amount of time talking about various things. Hopefully do you guys feel armed to go forward with the path of WoW? Those of you who haven't already begun to explore it, I hope that you have. Feel that you're ready. And I think that we will again have a meeting next Sunday. Because I think I'm also free then, but I'm not positive. I'll let you know as early in the week as I can. But so, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask before we part today? There's a little bit of a lag. So during that time period, again, I'll take a look at my New Hermetics Tarot here. Thing I want to say. Oops. Not sure what just happened here. Are you guys still hearing me? Okay, so yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on. Any meeting is being very strange. It's really going wiggly everywhere. So at any rate, I guess this is a good time for us to part company, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. And I will hopefully see you next Sunday. Have a wonderful rest of your day. My blessings to all of you.